my sweet friends, I hope you are all well. Welcome back to my channel. If this looks a little different to you, that is because I am not filming at my usual location at my home. We are still at the lake, and I have kind of brought some supplies with me so that I can bring you a project while I'm here. And it was fortuitous to be checking out YouTube. I saw a lot of people were filming some hauls that they picked up from Ollie's, and so I had to go check it out. We don't have an Ollie's near where we live, but there is one next to Hobby Lobby, and so we can go when we are here at the lake. Now, they had some things. I didn't get a whole ton of stuff because, you know, I just did my Christmas in July haul, and I had too much stuff there. But I did get a couple of good things, and so I did find some single patterns of this Jen Hadfield paper, which I have had previously, and I really loved it. And so I think this was a lot of fun to create with. It's very bright and cheerful and happy, and I need that today because, y'all, it is storming, and I've had to film between raindrops here because it is quite loud on the roof, but I think I did okay. And I also wanted to try a variation on having a way to have inserts but without making pockets, so I did that. And so this is just going to be sweet little folio. The single-sided paper selection did not have a cut apart sheet, so I don't have focal images or anything like that, but I worked around that by including a little bit of a wood grain pattern. I think that kind of neutralizes it, and so this makes it pretty good for lots of different occasions. And I think as you see while we're working along that it would be very easy to switch out the theme for a holiday or any kind of occasion. And so let's check this out. We have these sweet little flaps on the top, and this whole page will turn down, and then we have inserts that are tucked into a band. And so how they are going to stay in place is that they're secured from right to left, and then this bottom flap will hold them in, and they will be nice and snugly in there. So you're going to get a lot of space here for your pictures and journaling. Put that here, and then also on the back side of our inserts it is white, so you could add your journaling to the back of that. Use these as photo mats. And so I just kind of mixed and matched those papers as I went along, and I had a good time creating these different arrangements. And these pages were so fast and easy to put together. Not too many supplies, but once you have them all layered, it's very sturdy. And so this makes a nice chunky little album. And like I said, this was new paper, but if you have paper in your stash, I want you to use that, because that is what we're trying to accomplish here, is getting through what we have and making room for something new. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. So I'm going to work on that base now, and I'm starting with 3 pieces of 65-pound weight cardstock, and I have that cut to be 11 inches high by 6 inches wide. I've scored it at 4 and also 8. So we're going to get that nice overlap. Once I had that done, I came back in with my punch board and rounded those corners. And so that is going to give it a nice little bit of extra detail. And like I mentioned, I have 3 of these. Now we need a way to connect them. So I am going to also have 3 pieces of 65-pound weight cardstock. It is 4 high by 4 1/4 wide, scored at 2 and 2 1/4. So we're going to get a nice bit to adhere between those layers, and then also 1/4 inch for the spine, and that's going to give us the room we need to add all of those layers that we want for the inside. So I do have my double-sided tape adhered, and I'm going to use my 2 glue combo to adhere these together. So I'll just strap a little bit of that Tombow inside, and then I want to bring together those score lines so that it's nice and even across the back. And you'll see why in just a moment. And get that into place, and then make sure that everything lines up along the side and the back as well. I'm going to do that one more time. Remember, we have 3 pieces, so I do have my tape on this piece, and I'm going to come back in with my Tombow, bring my corners together, and then press that into place. So now what I want to do is come in and start dropping in those pages. And so once again, I have added my Tombow here on the inside, following that with the Tombow. I want to add these corners together right where that first score line is. Might be difficult to see with camera. So now you've got that flap, and then you would continue to work along doing that same process for the other 2 pages. So we've got our 3 pages added. I do want to include a cover for this so that our front doesn't have that flap. That will eliminate a lot of space that we would want to add our finishing details. So I have another piece here, and this one is cut to be 4 by 12, scored at 6, so exactly in half. And then I'm going to attach this here right alongside the score line. I'll flip that over, and then you see I have already added some of my double-sided tape there. I'll follow up with my Tombow, and then when I fold that over, I am sandwiching that piece in between those layers. So maybe I want to come back and just trim a little bit of this excess so that I have a nice clean edge. And so this is going to be our front cover. We're going to decorate that last because I do want to put some ribbon trim. So let's go ahead and just skip to our first set of pages here. Now what I want to do is have the pattern continue from one page to the other, sort of like a 2-page layout, and then also on the inside, but I want to have a different pattern for the top flap, just so that we're gonna get a lot of nice detail in. So for the full-size pages, I have my cardstock cut to be 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. Now that's a little bit more of a border of the base than I usually allow, but I do want to make sure that I don't have anything close to any of those bendy pieces because I don't want it to get caught up. And so then the pattern paper for this is going to be 3 5/8 by 5 5/8. And I'm just going to continue working along with that 2 glue combo. Now when I start adding all of these layers is when we're going to get that super sturdy thickness. And so you can see that this is more of a border than I usually have, but I still think it looks quite nice. And you could easily imagine this swapped out for a holiday pattern or really any other theme. So this is pretty versatile and you're going to get a lot of good use out of that. So remember when I mentioned that I took my punch board and I rounded those edges for extra detail, and so I went ahead and did that as well for the colorful cardstock and the pattern paper, just so that it would have a nice consistent look. So this is going to give you quite a lot of room really for your pictures and journaling. So you can add, you know, your full-size pictures here, and then we are going to add a little band so that you can have your inserts, and that will greatly improve the space inside as well. So you see we have that done, and let's go ahead and finish the inside of this flap as we're working along. I think if you wanted to skip the white cardstock, you could just go right to your colorful cardstock, but kind of adapt your measurements for that as you're working along. I like that extra added layer of sturdiness, so I think I would probably continue to do that. So now let's go ahead and cover those flaps, and I do want to have a very contrasting pattern so that it is definitely layerable and noticeable. For that flap is 3 inches high, so I've got my colorful cardstock cut to be 2 3/4 by 5 3/4, and the pattern paper is 2 5/8 by 5 5/8, and just going to drop that right in there. It's kind of easier to get it centered when we have that bigger outside border, I think, so that will make it come together much faster. And of course we do want to finish that inside of the flap, so I have that same pattern to work along, keeping in mind those rounded corners. So now you can imagine how nice and thick that is. So when we get to this last page on the inside, that's where our band is going to come in, and I want to tuck my inserts into there, and then you can see how nicely they'll be enclosed and very secure here. So I have a piece of cardstock cut to be 1 inch by 8 inches, and I just have that excess because I want to be able to wrap that around and have it secured. So this is the same size as the measurement for that page, and I just want to press it into place here, and then I will bring in my scoreboard because I do like to get this nice and even and a crisp fold. So I'll just add that strip of paper to the top and then bring my page up to it so that I have a full groove on one side here to use that tool. And then you'll need to move this whole thing as a single unit down until you get a groove on the other side as well. And then you're going to have some nice even score lines. And so I would do that for all 3 of these. And as I'm working along, I will say I would probably stop at 3. Potentially 4 would be like the highest amount of pages that you would want to add, just because of that spine situation. You do want it to be secured, and so I would stop either at 3, but definitely at 4. So let's remove the backing from that tape now, and I'll just fold that over and secure it on to the back. I'm going to head and add a little bit more tape just so that I have a continuous run of adhesive going along, and then I'll pull the backing off. We can secure this on to the page. And so once again, we're going to have that nice generous border. And then I'll use my offcuts from the other pages to cover this band. And so I'm going to pull it a little bit closer so that I can see it better. But I do want to get this centered. And so I have taken a piece of paper from another one of those tablets from Ollie's, and I just cut out a rounded corner rectangle, and this is going to be really nice for photo mats, and then you can have your journaling on the back. And so this tablet was pretty thick, and this is going to be nice and sturdy inside, and I think I'm going to put 2 in each one. You see how well that slides in there, and then you will have it very secured by folding that up. So just go ahead and repeat that process until you get through these pages. Okay, so while I was working along, I did go ahead and finish the back. Now remember that I said I wanted to wrap a little trim in, so I'll do that. Of course, I'm going to pick some beautiful stitched satin ribbon. This is from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and it is going to tie a really nice, sweet little bow here. I just want to have enough to have a generous loop at the end. So for the cover, I'm going to start with that same pretty pattern as I added it to the back, and this 2 glue combo will definitely help to get that trim well secured in between those layers. And then I'm going to take some of the offcuts and add some layering, and I think this just helps to give it a little bit of extra detail. I've got this cut down so that I could utilize that same border that I have from my colorful cardstock. Just gonna drop that there. And then another additional layer of detail that I can add is this sweet little scallop, and this is a chunky scallop meant to be used for a rooftop, and this is a lawn fawn die, but I think it's just a nice little bit of something extra. It's a little hard to get it exactly straight, but I think that looks pretty good. And I did have my Recollection doily die cut here. I do like to separate a little bit of those background busy patterns so that I can add some layering. Now, as I mentioned, I don't have any cut aparts for these single sheets that I picked up, and I didn't have any of my printables handy to use, so I'm just going to continue with that little wood grain pattern. I think it's neutral enough so that it kind of looks just like a little layering bit, but I think that'll be fine for this. And I do have flowers that I created. It is a compact arrangement because remember, this is only 4 inches high, so we have to kind of condense what we have, but these are handmade flowers. And I've also just put 1 layer of foliage here in a loopy twine bow. I do want to add that with hot glue. I've got a couple of charms here and a button to balance that detail on this side. So that button is just going to help to cover those cut strings, and I'll just tie a little bow here. Now, I did forget my sequins at home, otherwise I would have put some on. I will have those adhered before I list this, but for now I think this is pretty nice. Let me just cut the excess ribbon off so I'll have even loops. So that's going to be it for our little folio for today, and I hope I have inspired you to create one that has space for your inserts, but not necessarily with pockets, kind of a different variation. And maybe you can also check out Ollie's if you have one nearby. If you do have one and you get something as a good deal, let me know in the comments what it is that you found. You can check for links in the description. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.